Good morning, good afternoon or good evening everybody. Welcome back to my YouTube channel and to the next instalment in the Sydney Railroad build. In the previous instalment I built the curved approaches to the lower level staging yard. This week I'm going to get the main staging yard framed up. It's a big impressive part of the frame but not particularly complicated, so I'm sure it'll go quickly. So let's just head outside and get to work. While the glue is setting up on this curved frame, I've started working on the level above. This is the end frame that supports part of the ladder for the main staging yard. It goes in this corner, just above this curve. I can't install it just yet because the only place I could break it while avoiding all the turnouts was about 4 inches short of this leg. So I don't really have any legs to support it on. So what I need to do before I can install that is build the next frame, and then that can rest on the next two pairs of legs, and then the corner frame can be attached to that one. It will need a temporary leg in the corner of the room, even though ultimately that will be on a ledger board attached to the wall. It's basically just 3.5 inch wide strips of plywood. I modified this corner slightly since it's not necessary. The curves come out to about here, so I've got a little bit more space than I need. But I left that open just in case I need to stand in there during assembly for anything. I probably won't need that hole, but it doesn't hurt to have it there. And by cutting that corner off the plywood, it makes the frame slightly lighter as well. Anyway, I don't have all the numbers for the turnout locations, and more specifically the switch machine locations for the next board. So rather than frame that up, I'm just going to make all the cross members for the rest of that 45-foot run. I need a lot of them. It's almost a full sheet's worth. But since they are 37.5 inches long, I'm wasting quite a lot if I cut them from a full sheet. So I'm going to start by cross-cutting a sheet of plywood so that I have that offcut at the end that I can use for something else. So let me get on the table saw, do that quickly, and I will be right back. Well, since I made the last recording, I've cut up a whole load of strips, 3 sheets worth. I've got a pile down there. There's a pile over here. Those are the 7-footers for the side rails. And I have 40, I think 42 of the cross pieces for the next 5 frames. It might be a few short, but I don't want to make too many and waste the wood. And I've drilled the holes in half of them. I will continue tomorrow. So don't go away, I'll see you then. Well, that is 4 more frames assembled this afternoon so far. That is most of the main staging yard. These 2 sections that I did first today, the one we can see now and the next one here, are slightly longer than 7 feet. They're actually 86 3/4. The reason for that being that the joint that goes about here at the end of the first section, I had to move off layout to avoid having turnouts across it. And it's about 6 inches off where the leg comes up. So it's going to need an awkward bracket at the top. So by making up most of that 6 inches over the next 2 frames, most of the length of the staging yard can have simple legs that support directly under the joints. Note how this frame here has uneven spacing. There's a 6-inch gap at the end, and then there's a mixture of 11 and 12-inch gaps after that. That allows the joist to be well away from the switch machines. Anyway, it's still fairly early in the afternoon. I'm going to see about getting some of this up on legs, and I may or may not make another recording later on today. Well, in order to start mounting these frames, I had to dismantle the supports for the temporary control panel. I also had to move this board about 1 inch because it just fouled the edge. But I've measured the length of the first frame back from the level, which is clamped against the end, 64 inches, back to this mark. It needs to line up perfectly at the front. It overhangs the back. So apart from being 13.5 inches too low, that's where it goes. Next thing I've got to do is work on some temporary legs, get it supported to the right height, and then I can figure out what I need in the way of permanent legs that will stay with the railroad and go all the way to Sydney with it. So let me just get back to work quickly and I'll check in with you again later. Well, that is one section supported in exactly the right place. What I've got to do next is figure out exactly what I need in the way of permanent supports. There will be a row of legs down the front after the second track. So in this slightly wider gap here where my fingers are. And then the back edge of the main level will be supported on a ledger board on the wall. And the lower level staging will be hung from the main staging yard. The back row of legs along the lower staging, as I mentioned in a previous video, are temporary. Those will no longer be required once the railroad is in its final resting place. But without a convenient wall to hang this off, I will need a row of temporary legs along the back. And of course, they've got to be braced firmly enough to take the place of the non-existent wall. Well, I've been out here several hours this morning. I haven't made any clips yet, but I have been pretty busy. I got the next frame built. I haven't installed it yet, but I'll do that this afternoon. I got some legs along the back edge, and although these legs are permanent for the construction phase, they won't be required once the railroad is installed in the client's basement, because there'll be a ledger board along the wall here. Which is why I haven't bothered putting screw feet on the bottom. I just put them down and then level the top, and that's the height it needs to be. I've also gone most of the way along the front. Let me walk around there quickly. I've been putting the front legs in. These are permanent legs and they will be in their same locations once the railroad is installed in the basement. They're 2¼ inch wide strips of 3/4 inch plywood, and they sit on top of the lower leg, and there's a shoulder and then screwed to the side of the frame. And there is plenty of gap between those two tracks for trains to miss that on both sides. Because of the uneven spacing of the joists, those at one end need extra bearers, and the shoulder is done on the other direction. There it is. I've still got a few more to do, and I've got a lot more legs on the back to do because I've only done those at the ends of the frames. I still need the intermediate ones. But I'm going to go in and get some lunch now, and I'm going to come back out and finish up this afternoon. Well, this is all I'm going to do today. I have got one more section installed, well, one more section built and installed, and I've got this whole length permanently attached. All the permanent legs in the front, the hangers in the middle, these pieces along the back of the lower staging yard, and the temporary supports at the back. As I mentioned earlier, they are permanent as far as building the layout is concerned, but they will not be required once it's installed in the basement. So I don't know whether that makes them permanent or temporary. I wonder if there's a term for something between the two. Anyway, this whole section is about as solid as the bedrock, even without a wall to attach it to. So I'm very happy with that. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do tomorrow, but I'm sure it will be fun. So I'll see you then. Well, it is Saturday morning, and I have got the last frame for the main staging yard built and installed. Got everything leveled nicely. All the temporary legs and some permanent ones as well. Right now, this piece that you see is serving as a leg. Ultimately, once it's installed in the client's basement, it will become a hanger because the main staging level will be on a ledger board and the ramp down to the lower staging will be hanging from it. For most of the length of the staging yard, the front legs are set 2 tracks back because I think that looks a whole lot better. I wasn't able to do it at this end. I had to get a special one in because there was just no gap between the tracks wide enough to put a leg in. If I was thinking about that when I laid out the track, I could possibly have spread the tracks by sacrificing some length, but I think this will be fine. I will just paint it the same colour as the fascia and it should visually more or less disappear. Anyway, I'm going to go in, get some lunch now, and I'll come back out this afternoon. Well, I think this has been a good afternoon's work. Actually, it's been a very short afternoon, but I've made good progress. It's only about 4:15, but I think I'm going to go in now anyway. This next frame is in. This is the start of the lower scenic section. I've dropped the frame 3 inches to allow for the landscape that goes below track level. Actually, it will soon have a lot more height than that because the main line starts to climb very soon. So by the time we get to the far corner, the top of the framing will be about 7 or 8 inches below track level. I've got permanent legs in front and temporary ones behind, and I've also taken out the temporary legs that the low-level ramp was supported on because it now has hangers. The back of this frame will rest on a ledger board on the wall, and the lower ramp will be hung from it. This block of wood clamped here was the start of my 3-4-5 right angle triangle. I measured 9 feet along this side, 12 feet along here. Here's the 12-foot mark, and just where the frame wanted to sit, it was within 1/8 of an inch of being 15 feet. Just one gentle kick and it was perfect. Initially, I thought I was quite a way out because it ended up not parallel to the lower level ramp, but it turns out that it's the ramp that's not at 90 degrees to the room. But I'm not too worried about it. The error is in the right direction, so it still hangs with plenty of space. It's not going to foul anything. Anyway, I'm just going to take a few photographs and I'm going to go in and I will come out again Monday. So don't go away, I will be right back.
Well, that's all for this week. Hope you enjoyed the show and found it interesting or useful, or preferably both. In the next instalment, I'll work on some slightly more complicated structure for the area where the lower ramps start to intrude on the middle level. So I hope to see you back for that. Until then, have a great week. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.